Thesis. All right, so thesis for the AP DBQ. Let's hope this helps you folks. So hopefully what you've already done is looked over the videos or at least understood how to do these three things: how to read the prompt and how to read the documents, annotate them, and group them. Okay, that's a previous video that you should have looked at, or at least already know how to do that before you get to the thesis. So what is a thesis and what does it do? This is a little bit different than your thesis in English classes, but somewhat similar. Um, so if it kind of runs counter to what your English teacher is telling you to do, then that's fine. But I'm actually showing you what to do for AP World History and AP US. So a thesis is an answer to the prompt. Okay. It's a historically defensible claim. In other words, you're making a historical argument. You're arguing. And the response needs to be specific. Okay? You can't just be broad and say something like, there were many differences between the North and the South prior to the Civil War. You can't be that broad. And it responds to all of the different parts of the prompt. It's almost always located in the introduction. You should put it in the introduction. You should repeat it in a different way in the conclusion, just in case you don't get the points in the introduction. If you don't have enough time, just make sure you write a good one in the introduction right after your contextualization. And what it does is it's supposed to outline specifically what your argument is going to be. It outlines specifically what your argument is going to be. So the things you want to avoid is avoid just restating the prompt, because if you just restate the prompt, you're not actually having an argument. Now you can use some of the words in the prompt, but you don't just restate the prompt. Avoid only answering parts of the prompt. So if it's asking you to compare and contrast, then you need to compare and contrast. If it's asking you for the similarities and differences, put the similarities and the differences. If it's continuities and changes, put what changed, but also put down what remained the same. If you only do one piece, you will not get credit. Avoid vague answers once again, and avoid answering a question not asked in the prompt. So that's why you want to read the prompt a couple of times. You want to read it a couple of times and know exactly what it's asking, so you don't get confused and answer something completely different. Because you could write an excellent DBQ. If you're not answering the prompt and you're writing about something completely different, then you're not getting points. So what does analyze mean, right? Analyze means to break something down and explain it. So let's look at a couple of prompts and let's see how we're going to do our DBQs, how we're going to do our thesis statements for DBQs when they say analyze, okay? So what is the first thing you got to do? You got to read the prompt, figure out the task they're asking you to do or the skill, and then figure out the subject that they're talking about, and then the time period and location. This is why I also ask you guys to really know your map, know the locations, so that you know exactly what you can write about. So here's an example, a sports example. This is not a historical example. It's a sports example, only because I want to put it in because the Dodgers won the World Series. So in 2020, baseball in the United States resumed after the initial outbreak of COVID. The baseball season was only 60 games, making it difficult to assess the strength of teams. Develop an argument that evaluates the extent to which any two teams compared in offensive and defensive strength in the National League during the period of 2020. So I know this is baseball, but I phrased it in a similar way that they do the history stuff, just so you can kind of get an idea on something you already know if you know baseball. If you don't know baseball, I don't know, go watch Heimler's video on Thesis or something. So again, we got to look at the skill, subject, time period, and place. The skill, compare. So they're asking us to compare both offensive and defensive strength. So those are the two things I got to compare. What's the subject? The National League, right? I'm not comparing the American League. I'm comparing the National League. Time period, 2020. Place, the United States. Now you figure, well, of course it's the United States. No, there was Korean baseball going on before the United States. There's also Cuban baseball, Mexican baseball, Japanese baseball. So there's baseball all over the world. So I'm giving you the exact place and time. So I'm asking you to compare the National League in the United States in 2020. All right. So here it is. Although some people think that the Cincinnati Reds were the best team, the Dodgers were the best team overall. Is that a good thesis? No, that's a non-example. Why is this wrong? Why is this thesis wrong? Well, first of all, it's vague. It's just saying that they were the best team. It's not telling me the why they were the best team. And telling me about the Dodgers being better overall. But why? Again, this is too vague, right? Too vague. Let's see a better one. Although the Cincinnati Reds pitching had more strikeouts and shutouts, the Dodgers were the better team overall because they had a smaller earned run average, ERA, and scored more runs than any other team in baseball. So see, now I'm giving you the specifics. I'm talking about why some people may think that the Reds were better as far as their pitching, but I'm giving you the specifics, the strikeout rate and the shutouts. But I'm also telling you that the Dodgers were better because they had a better ERA and scored more runs. So again, I'm giving you the skill, subject, time period, and place. Skill, subject, time period, and place. We good? We good with that? Let's go to a historical example now. In the period from 1200 to 1450, governments responded to a variety of internal and external factors in order to develop administrative institutions and centralize power. We talked about this in Global Tapestry, right? So here's your question. Develop an argument that evaluates the extent to which levels of centralization in China and in European states differed. Okay, so now, what is the skill? We're talking about difference. They're not talking about similarities and differences, only the differences. Okay, so we're only supposed to write about what made them different, what made China and Europe different, and they're also asking about centralization. Centralization. They're not asking about religion. They're not asking, well, you could use religion to talk about centralization, but they're not asking you specifically about religion or culture or anything else. They're talking about centralization in China and in Europe. What's the time period? 1200 to 1450. 1200 to 1450. So that is the Global Tapestry period. So again, differed, time period, and subject and places. All right. So let's see some non-examples, right? There were similarities and differences in European and Chinese states and their levels of centralization. This, again, is too vague. You're not giving me any specifics, and you're talking about similarities and differences. Once again, they're only asking for differences. There were some political and economic similarities and differences. Again, same thing. You're going over similarities when they're only asking differences, and using the spice themes doesn't make it specific. Don't think that you can use the spice themes and get a point for the thesis. Now you can start off with the spice themes, but then you need to write your thesis statement after this. So now let's look at this. In the period of 1200 to 1450, European states such as France and the Holy Roman Empire, now I'm specific, were characterized with feudalism and the manorial system. So now I'm talking about some specifics, feudalism and the manorial system, and were more decentralized. So I'm saying that they were more decentralized because of the manorial and feudalistic systems. And I'm using the word more. This is just giving me now the ability to make an argument, right? Now you could argue that there was more centralization than meets the eye or whatever, but this word more gives me an argument. Now that makes my thesis and argument. And I'm saying that they were more decentralized in China under both the Song and Yuan dynasties, since the dynasties had centralized bureaucracy and one emperor with absolute power. So what makes the Chinese different than the Europeans? Well, the bureaucracy and the fact that they had one single emperor instead of different kings, right? So now I can write my essay on those specifics. We good? Feudal manorial system, that's the specific. Centralized bureaucracy and absolute power, that's the specifics. Example number 2. Analyze the similarities, and now we're going over similarities and differences between the diffusion of Buddhism from its origins to 1450 and the diffusion of Christianity from its origins to 1450. Make sure to discuss religion, how it gained its followers. So now, if you see this, something like this, you need to make sure to include this specific thing. How did it gain its followers, and how was it diffused, right? So here's similarities and differences, followers and diffusion. So you tell me if this is correct. From the period of Buddhism and Christianity's origins to 1450, I think I could reword that a little clearer. Both religions diffused in different parts of the world. So I'm going over how they diffused and had different teachings, how they diffused once again. Now here's my argument. However, more importantly, both religions appealed to the poor, went against established religions, and went against the acquisition of wealth. So now I'm discussing how they gained their followers. They gained their followers because these are the things that they went against established religions and wealth. So most of that stuff appealed to the poor. This is an argument, and it answers the question. I'm showing you similarities, differences. I'm discussing how it gained followers and how it was diffused. You need to read these things thoroughly to be able to get these kind of answers. So those are 2 examples. Example number 3, evaluate the extent to which political systems impacted commerce. I don't know if I answered this question. Maybe we'll answer this in class. How about that? We will answer this in class. So I'm going to pause the video right there. Oh no, there it is. There's the answer. I'm not looking right. Ha! Here it is. So although at times states overtaxed merchants, they generally created laws and political stability that encouraged trade and commerce, giving them a source of taxable income. So I'm giving you this particular thesis statement. I'm saying, although sometimes, again, this is the counter argument, although some states overtaxed merchants, they generally created political stability and encouraged trade. Okay, so again, that's example number 3. So for further in class, I'm going to give you another 5 examples, give you another 5 prompts, and give you an opportunity to make your own thesis statements.